Okay, so this is our last lecture in the biotechnology unit of the semester. So we're going to talk about genomics here. And what genomics is really a accumulation of all of the genetics information we covered back in the genetics unit, and then everything we talked about in biotechnology. Genomics is one of the fields of science that is just exploding with opportunities. It is rapidly changing as new technology changes, the field of genomics changes. We really only know a very small part about genomics. We're just scratching the surface. There's still so much that we don't understand about how our genomics work, complete genomics between species and across the diversity of life. So exciting field to get involved in and exciting field to watch to just see what is new and developing within this field. Okay, so when we look at genomics, let's talk about the basic starting point. And the starting point of genomics is looking at a thing called a genetic map. Now, a genetic map is going to be the location of a gene on a chromosome. So where is a gene positioned on the particular chromosome? And the term for this, excuse me, the position of the gene is called the loci. So loci is the location of a gene on a particular chromosome. So is it, I'll just throw out a couple easy examples for us to just put into perspective. It might be, and I'm just going to call it gene XY on chromosome 7, loci 228. So it gives us an idea of where that gene sits. Where does it rest upon that particular chromosome? And if we want to find it, where do we need to go? All right. So another part of genomics is looking at a physical map of our genetics. And these are DNA landmarks that form the DNA sequence. So when you look at the little picture of DNA below us here, all right, there's a chromosome. Can we actually find specific landmarks and use that to identify the DNA sequence? Oh, that's supposed to be landmarks. Specific landmarks on okay, so the specific landmarks on a chromosome that indicate a specific DNA sequence. This is what we're looking at when we start talking about the idea of a physical map. Okay, so a big part of genomics is looking at this genetic information and comparing it. So we have a kind of a subfield within genomics called comparative genomics. This is where we're going to look at the similarity between species. So easy example here, human to mouse. What are the similarities in the genetics between mice and humans? So we take out DNA from a person, extract it out of the cell, extract it out of the nucleus, chop it up with electrophoresis and those restriction enzymes, and then we look at, here are specific pieces of information on the chromosomes. We then do the same thing with the mouse genome and look at, here's the chromosomes of the mouse, let's chop them up, let's look at specific codes. Do we see parallels? Do we see patterns? Do we see similarities? So there's a lot of matching and pairing up of genetic information in the comparative genomics. One of the drives behind this field is if we find a gene in another species that we also have in us, it can help us learn more about ourselves. If we're doing medical research, if the gene is in a mouse and we understand how it changes or mutates and what the consequences are in the mouse, that can help us apply that knowledge to humans. So lots and lots of beneficial information and knowledge comes from this field of comparative genomics. We're also going to be looking at, with genomics, the comparative genomics, what's called nuclear DNA. and using that information to determine, do we have a common ancestor out there? And when did we diverge from that common ancestor? So we'll get into this actual aspect of genomics more when we talk about human evolution in later lectures. But what we're looking at is, let's look at modern humans. This is our line right here, who we are today. And then we start looking at all the other species of hominids that are similar to humans. So Neanderthals, the archaic Cro-Magnons, the Homo habilis, Homo erectus, these are all hominid ancestors and hominid relatives in our evolutionary tree, and we use comparative genomics to understand similarities and times of divergence. So based upon the genetics, because the really cool thing with Neanderthals, we've discovered Neanderthals buried in caves, in the ice, in different parts of the world. We have their entire bodies available to study. So we have their DNA. It's not guesswork because their DNA is still intact because their bodies have been preserved. But we can look at modern humans and say, okay, what's considered a modern human appeared about 190,000 years ago, somewhere in this time frame. And there's an ancestral population that was running around about 400,000 years ago, and this is when there was a divergence. The population splits. Some of them evolved towards Neanderthal, some of them evolved towards what would eventually become modern human. So we're using comparative genomics to look at this. If we push back even further, we look at, based on certain genome sequences, there's a common ancestor to all of us. So all these other groups out there, roughly 700,000 years ago. So again, we'll see this, we'll revisit this exact idea when we get into hominid or human evolution and look at how genomics and the Genome Project and DNA and all this information supports evolutionary theory. So really fascinating information about it. What genomics has shown is that Europeans and Asians have anywhere between 1 to 4% of their DNA that is from Neanderthals. So our ancestors, our European ancestors and Asian ancestors were interbreeding with Neanderthals, mixing up the genome. Now, individuals from an African heritage did not encounter Neanderthals. Different geographical regions. Neanderthals were never found in Africa. They're found in different parts. They're found in Europe. They're found in Central Asia. That's why modern humans have some Neanderthal heritage if you have European or Asian ancestral history or ancestral heritage. So it was a really interesting surprise when we started looking at genomics of modern humans and looking at different ethnic or different groups of modern humans and looking at comparative genomics between us. So it is a fascinating field, and again, a field with great opportunity. What we really want to think about with genomics are the different applications. What can we do with this? What is the benefit to society and to people with the field of genomics? So the list is extensive. I mean, it's a massive list. I just put up a couple different ones here to just kind of stimulate the ideas, get you guys thinking, what can we possibly do with this? So, diseases. We can use genomics to understand disease better. HIV, SARS, Ebola, Zika. Think about all these different diseases. If they're viral-based and bacterial-based, they have genetic information in them. They carry DNA, they carry RNA. So we can understand how that virus is changing by looking at its genomics. That might be a way to stop it, to stop the disease. Agriculture. With us in Illinois, massive agricultural state. Look at all those little signs that are out there along the road. That's telling us these are crops that have been produced through biotechnology, genetic engineering. We use genomics to improve our agriculture. This is how we make crops resistant to pests, make them more drought tolerant, producing toxins so we can decrease the amount of pesticide usage. Huge application of this field in agriculture. If you guys are looking to move forward with your education, your career, and you go into genomics, ADM, Pioneer, Monsanto, every major seed company has people with biology degrees and backgrounds in genomics on their staff. So great opportunity. Put together two different disciplines, biology and agriculture, and blend them together into a career. And again, genetic engineering, we've already talked a lot about that, so I won't go into detail there, but huge applications for the field of genomics. So, okay, so what I really want us to take a look at and talk more about is this thing called the Human Genome Project. Now, I'd encourage you guys, go to the link there. If for some reason the link breaks or browser doesn't pick it up, Google Human Genome Project and take a look at this. We're going to talk about some of the basics, kind of the overview and some of the highlights, but it's changing. It is constantly changing, and this is a project that is unbelievably influential in our lives. It's definitely something as a bio major, get a handle on, get some background on this, huge opportunities, but I promise you guys will see this project and this information come up in a lot of your future courses. Okay, so again, the website's got the most updated information, more details, more in depth, for more background. I'm going to kind of hit highlights here with what's going on with the Genome Project and the concepts behind it. So let's jump in and look at the genome, Human Genome Project. Okay, Homo sapiens, that's how we're classified. Human beings, that's our genus species or genus specificat. You look at that picture there, and everybody walking around in that picture, looks like the lobby of a college or a mall or somewhere, everybody there is classified as Homo sapien. Everybody in that picture we would expect to have 23 pairs or 46 total chromosomes. Now, we do get Down syndrome, we do get those issues where you have an extra one, but the bulk of the human population, that's the genome, 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs. So the Genome Project, part of it, and I just say part of it was to look at our chromosomes and find out what type of information is found on each of the chromosomes. If you put it into an educational perspective, your genome is like a textbook, and your textbook has chapters. Chromosomes represent the chapters. Within a chapter, there are headings. There are these little subchapters, or what we call the subheadings. Those are going to be sections on the chromosome. This paragraph, that paragraph, section 15.2, 15.3, etc. Within each section, there is specific information. It's exactly how the genome is laid out. Chromosome 1, chapter 1, has this many sections. In this section is this information. In that section is that. You go through all 23 chromosomes or 23 pairs, and that's how the genetic information works. So the Genome Project is trying to figure out and understand better what's in this book, what is in our book of information. Okay? So if you guys want more information, get into the Genome website. Here's another link, the timeline of the genome. It Unlocking Life's Code, and it looks at the history of how the Genome Project came to be. So we want to get a little bit of a background on the history before we jump into what we're doing and then look at the future, the possible future. Okay, so again, there's another link there. If that breaks, go back to the main genome website and then side search for the timeline. All right, but the goal here is looking at what's going on with us. If we go back far enough, everybody in this room, everybody in this town, everybody in this state, in the country, in the world, shares a common ancestor. We have common ancestral origins. We'll get into this more when we get into evolution, the genome is helping us understand this better from a genetic perspective. Okay, so in our next lecture, we'll take a look at the history of the genome.